The wind was already screaming when Cole Maddox rode into Dry Creek. It wasn't the kind of wind that whispered through the grass or rattled a few loose shutters. This was a wind that carried grit sharp enough to cut skin, a wind that made the air taste like iron and old blood. His horse, a scarred bay named Bramble, tossed its head, nostrils flaring at the scent of trouble. Cole didn't need the wind to tell him something was wrong. He could feel it in the way the town's main street lay too still, the way the saloon doors hung half open without a sound, the way the curtains in the upstairs windows didn't twitch even though the storm was coming. Dry Creek wasn't sleeping. It was holding its breath. He swung down from Bramble, boots hitting the dirt with a dull thud. The air was heavy, pressing against his chest. Somewhere far off, a sign creaked once, then fell silent. Cole's hand rested on the worn grip of his Colt, not because he wanted a fight, but because he knew one was already waiting for him. From the corner of his eye, he caught movement, for men stepping out from the alley beside the general store. Their hats were pulled low, their coats heavy despite the heat. The leader, a tall man with a jagged scar running from his left ear to the corner of his mouth, smiled without warmth. Well, the scarred man drawled, his voice like gravel dragged over stone. If it ain't Cole Maddox, thought you were smart enough to stay out of Dry Creek. Cole didn't answer right away. He studied them, the way their hands hovered near their belts, the way their boots shifted in the dust. They weren't here to talk. They were here to finish something. I'm just passing through, Cole said finally, his voice low, steady. Don't want trouble. The scarred man's smile widened, but his eyes stayed cold. Trouble's already here. Before Cole could reply, the sound of boots on wood echoed from behind him. He turned just enough to see 3 more men stepping out from the saloon, rifles in hand. 7 against 1. The odds were bad, but odds had never stopped him before. The wind picked up, swirling dust between them like a curtain. Cole's heartbeat slowed, his senses sharpening. He could hear the faint jingle of spurs, the creak of leather, the rasp of someone's breath. Every detail burned into his mind. Then the scarred man's hand twitched toward his gun. Cole moved first. The Colt cleared leather in a blur, the first shot cracking through the air like thunder. One of the alley men went down hard, his gun clattering to the dirt. Cole pivoted, firing again. The second man staggered back, clutching his shoulder, his rifle slipping from his grasp. The street exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes lit the dust, the air filling with the sharp tang of gunpowder, cold of behind a water trough. Bullets splintering the wood beside his head. He could feel the heat of the lead as it passed, could hear the hiss of the wind carrying the sound away. He counted his shots, 3 left. He needed to move. Rolling out from cover, he sprinted toward the saloon steps, firing twice in quick succession. One rifleman dropped. The other stumbled back into the doorway, cursing. Cole slammed into the nearest post, reloading with practiced speed, his fingers moving without thought. The scarred man was still standing in the middle of the street, his gun drawn now. His eyes locked on Cole. You should have stayed gone, Maddox, he shouted over the wind. Cole stepped out from behind the post, his voice calm despite the chaos. You should have left me a reason to. They fired at the same time. The scarred man's bullet tore through Cole's coat, grazing his ribs. Cole's shot hit true. The man staggered, eyes wide. Before collapsing into the dust, the remaining outlaws hesitated, their leader gone, their nerve breaking. One by one, they backed away, disappearing into the alleys, leaving only the sound of the wind and the smell of smoke. Cole stood there for a long moment, chest heaving, the weight of the fight settling into his bones. His side burned where the bullet had grazed him, but he was still standing, still breathing. Bramble whinnied softly from where he'd tied her, as if asking if it was over. Cole glanced at the bodies in the street, then at the empty windows above. The town was still silent, but it was no longer holding its breath. He holstered his Colt and walked back to his horse, the wind tugging at his coat. He didn't look back. In the Old West, you never looked back, not if you wanted to keep moving forward. But as he swung into the saddle, he felt the weight of unseen eyes on him. This wasn't over, not yet. The sun was sinking low, bleeding red across the jagged horizon when Cole Maddox reached the mouth of Blackthorn Canyon. The air here was different, still, heavy, as if the world itself was holding back a secret. Bramble's hooves crunched over loose stone, each step echoing off the canyon walls like a warning. Cole's ribs still ached from the graze he'd taken in Dry Creek, but the pain was a reminder. The fight wasn't finished. He'd seen them in the distance hours ago. The survivors from the street fight. They'd ridden hard, cutting across the flats, heading for the canyon. Cole knew why. Blackthorn was a place where men could disappear, where the rocks swallowed sound and the shadows played tricks on the eyes. If they were regrouping, it would be here. The wind had died, replaced by the slow, steady drip of water somewhere deep in the stone. Cole dismounted, tying Bramble to a scrub of mesquite. He checked his Colt, then the Winchester slung across his back. The metal was warm from the day's heat, but his grip was steady. He moved into the canyon, boots silent on the sand. The walls rose high on either side, streaked with rust red and gold, the colors deepening in the fading light. Every step forward felt like stepping into a throat that might close at any moment. A voice broke the silence. "You've got grit, Maddox. I'll give you that." Cole froze, eyes scanning the shadows. The voice came from above, a man standing on a ledge 20 feet up, rifle in hand. Another figure appeared on the opposite wall. Then another. They were boxed in. The canyon was their trap, from deeper within. The scarred man's second in command stepped into view, broad-shouldered, with a black hat pulled low and a bandolier across his chest. He grinned like a wolf. "You killed our boss," he said, his tone almost casual. "That makes you mine." Cole's jaw tightened. "You can walk away. No one else has to die." The man laughed, the sound bouncing off the stone. "You think you're the hero here. Heroes don't last long in Blackthorn." The first shot came from the ledge, Cole dove sideways, the bullet sparking off the rock where he'd been standing. He rolled, came up on one knee, and fired. The man on the ledge jerked back, his rifle clattering down to the sand below. Shouts erupted. Two more men rushed from the shadows ahead, guns blazing. Cole dropped one with a clean shot to the chest, then ducked behind a boulder as the second's bullets chipped stone into his face. He could taste grit and copper on his tongue. The canyon was alive now, gunfire cracking, boots pounding, voices shouting orders. Cole's mind narrowed to the rhythm of survival. Move, aim, fire, reload. He darted from cover to cover, each shot deliberate, each movement calculated. The Winchester barked in his hands, the recoil a steady heartbeat. A figure lunged from behind a rock, knife flashing in the dim light. Cole caught the man's wrist, twisting hard until the blade clattered to the ground. They grappled, boots sliding in the sand, the man's breath hot and ragged in Cole's ear. With a sharp shove, Cole sent him sprawling, then ended it with a single, merciful shot. The second in command was still standing, firing from behind a jagged outcrop. His shots were wild now, desperate. Cole could see the fear creeping in, the way his shoulders hunched, the way his eyes darted toward the canyon's exit. Cole stepped out from cover, his voice carrying over the chaos. "It's over," the man snarled, raising his gun, but Cole was faster. The shot echoed like thunder, and the man crumpled, his hat tumbling into the dust. Silence fell, broken only by the drip of water and the slow settling of sand. The last of the outlaws melted into the shadows, their will to fight gone. Cole stood, alone in the canyon, chest heaving, the smell of gunpowder hanging heavy in the air. He reloaded slowly, the metallic click of each round a steady counterpoint to the pounding in his ears. His hands were steady, but inside, something twisted, not guilt, not exactly, but the weight of knowing that every fight left a mark you couldn't see. Bramble was waiting where he'd left her, ears flicking at the sound of his approach. Cole patted her neck, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath the dust dawn as he swung into the saddle. The last light of day caught the canyon walls, turning them the color of blood. Cole didn't look back. He didn't need to. He knew the canyon would remember, and so would he. The town of Redwater looked harmless enough from a distance, a scatter of low buildings, a windmill turning slow in the evening breeze, and the faint smell of mesquite smoke drifting on the air. But Cole Maddox had learned long ago that danger rarely announced itself with a shout. It waited, quiet and patient, behind half-closed doors. Bramble's hooves clopped softly on the packed dirt as they entered the main street. The sun was a molten coin sinking behind the hills, throwing long shadows that stretched like fingers across the ground. Cole's ribs still ached from the canyon fight, each breath a reminder that he'd been close to not making it out. He needed rest, supplies, a place to think. But as he passed the saloon, he caught the flicker of eyes watching him from the upstairs window. The curtain twitched, then stilled. He kept writing, not looking up again. But his hand drifted toward the Colt at his hip. The general store was nearly empty. A thin man behind the counter nodded once, his gaze darting to the door and back again. Cole picked up coffee, cartridges, and a roll of bandage, laying them on the counter without a word. "You're Maddox," the storekeeper said, quietly as if testing the name. Cole's eyes narrowed. "You hear that from the canyon?" The man shook his head. "Word travels faster than horses out here. You killed Riker's brother." Riker. The name was a stone dropping into Cole's gut. He'd heard it before. A rancher turned outlaw, with enough men and money to choke a county, if the survivors from Dry Creek had run to him. Cole's fight was far from over. "How many?" Cole asked. The storekeeper hesitated, then leaned closer. "Enough to fill this street. And they'll come at night." Cole paid for the supplies and stepped back into the fading light. The street was quieter now, the kind of quiet that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. He could feel the town watching him, not with curiosity, but with the wary distance of people who knew trouble was about to spill over. He led Bramble to the livery, paid for a stall, and kept his rifle slung across his back as he walked to the boarding house. The woman at the desk didn't ask questions, just handed him a key and told him the room was at the end of the hall. Inside, the room smelled faintly of dust and lamp oil. Cole set his gear on the table, lit the lamp, and sat by the window. From here, he could see the street, the saloon, and the dark shapes moving in the alleys. They weren't hiding from him. They were circling. He cleaned his Colt slowly, the ritual steadying his thoughts. Every click of the cylinder, every pass of the cloth over the barrel, was a reminder that preparation was the only thing between him and the grave. Hours passed. The town settled into night. The lamplight from the saloon spilled onto the street, painting the dust gold. Somewhere, a piano played a slow, uneven tune. Cole waited. The first sign came just after midnight. The piano stopped mid-note. The saloon doors swung open, and 3 men stepped into the street. Behind them, more shadows emerged from the alleys, rifles glinting in the moonlight. Cole blew out the lamp, letting the room fall into darkness. He moved to the door, listening. Boots on wood, low voices, the creak of the boarding house stairs. They were coming for him. He slipped into the hallway, moving silent as smoke. At the top of the stairs, he saw them, 2 men, guns drawn, scanning the shadows. Cole stepped out from the corner, the Colt already up. 2 shots, 2 bodies down before they could cry out. Shouts erupted outside. Cole ran to the window, saw the street alive with movement. Riker's men were spreading out, some heading for the livery, others toward the back of the boarding house. He needed to move, now. Cole vaulted the railing, landing hard on the ground floor, and burst out the back door into the narrow alley. The air was sharp with the smell of gun oil and sweat. He kept low, weaving between crates and barrels until he reached the livery. Bramble was restless, ears flicking at the noise. Cole saddled her fast, the leather straps biting into his fingers. A shout went up. They'd seen him. The first bullet hit the wall beside his head, showering him with splinters. He swung into the saddle, spurred Bramble hard, and they exploded. Out of the livery into the open street. Gunfire cracked behind him, the sound chasing him into the night. But Cole didn't ride for the hills. He turned sharply, cutting down a side street, then another, until he was behind the saloon. From here, he could see the bulk of Riker's men gathered in the main street, waiting for him to come charging through. He smiled grimly. Let them wait. Cole dismounted, tied Bramble in the shadows, and moved toward the saloon's back door. Inside, the place was empty, the piano silent. He climbed the stairs to the balcony, where he had a clear view of the street below. The Winchester came off his back smooth as breath. He braced it on the railing, sighted down the barrel, and began to pick them off 1, 2, 3, each shot echoing like a hammer strike in the still night. Panic rippled through the men below. They fired wildly, but Cole was already moving, shifting position after each shot. The street became chaos, men shouting, scattering, tripping over each other in the dust. When the last of them broke and ran, Cole lowered the rifle. His heart was steady, his breathing slow. He'd bought himself time, but not safety. Riker would hear about this, and when he came, it wouldn't be with a handful of men. Cole slung the rifle, went back for Bramble, and rode out of Redwater. Under the cold light of the moon, the road ahead was long, and the fight was far from over. But for now, he was still alive, and that was enough. The moon was high and sharp as a silver blade when Cole Maddox reached the edge of the Badlands. The land here was a maze of jagged rock and dry washes, the kind of place where a man could vanish or be hunted without ever seeing his pursuer. Bramble's breath steamed in the cold night air, her ears flicking at sounds Cole couldn't yet place. He'd been riding for hours since leaving Redwater, keeping to the less traveled trails, doubling back twice to throw off pursuit. But the feeling hadn't left him, that prickling at the base of his neck, the sense of eyes in the dark. Riker's men weren't just chasing him, they were tracking him. Cole reined in at a narrow pass between two towering slabs of sandstone. The wind funneled through here in low, mournful tones, carrying with it the faintest scent of wood smoke. He dismounted, crouched, and touched the ground. The prints were fresh, 3 riders, maybe 4, no more than an hour ahead or behind. He led Bramble through the pass, every step measured, his eyes scanning the ridgelines. The moonlight painted the rocks in silver and shadow, turning every outcrop into the suggestion of a rifleman. Somewhere far off, a coyote called. The sound thin and lonely. Half a mile on, he found the camp. It was small, just a low fire, banked to hide its glow, and 3 bedrolls laid out in a half circle. 2 were empty. The third held a man sleeping with his head over his face, a rifle within arm's reach. Cole studied him for a long moment, then stepped forward. The Colt loose in his hand. The man stirred, blinked up at him, and froze. "Where's Riker?" Cole asked, his voice low. The man swallowed. "Close." Cole's eyes narrowed. "How close?" The answer came from the darkness behind him. "Close enough." Cole turned slowly. Riker sat his horse just beyond the firelight, a tall, broad-shouldered figure with a long coat that shifted in the wind. His face was shadowed beneath the brim of his hat, but his voice carried the weight of a man used to being obeyed. "You've been busy, Maddox," Riker said. "Dry Creek, Blackthorn, Redwater. You've cost me men. You've cost me time." Cole didn't move. "They came for me. I finished it." Riker's chuckle was low, humorless. "You think this is about them? This is about you. You've been a thorn in my side for too long." The man by the fire shifted, his hand inching toward his rifle. Cole's gaze flicked to him, then back to Riker. "You want me, Riker? Then take your shot." Riker swung down from his horse, the movement slow, deliberate. "Not tonight. Tonight, I want you to run." Cole's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because the hunt's the best part," Riker said, stepping into the firelight. His face was lean, weathered, his eyes pale and cold. "And I want you to know I'm coming. Every step you take, every breath you draw, I'll be there, until you're too tired to fight." The fire popped, sending a spray of sparks into the night. Cole could feel the weight of the moment, the choice. Stand and fight now, outnumbered and boxed in, or take the challenge and draw Riker into ground of his own choosing. He backed away, slow, never turning his back. "You'll regret giving me the head start." Riker smiled thinly. "We'll see." Cole mounted Bramble in one smooth motion, the mare surging forward into the darkness behind him. The firelight faded, replaced by the cold gleam of the hunter's moon. The land opened up into a tangle of gullies and ridges, the kind of country where a man could vanish or set a trap. He rode hard for an hour, then cut into a narrow wash, letting Bramble drink from a shallow pool. His mind was already working. The angles, Riker was confident, maybe too confident, that could be turned. Cole found a spot where the wash narrowed between 2 high walls of rock. He dismounted, checked his rifle, and began to work, moving stones, setting up cover, marking the best lines of fire. The moon slid west, shadows deepening. By the time he heard the first hoof beats, the place was ready. They came in slow, cautious, Riker in the lead, two men flanking him. Cole waited until they were in the choke point, then stepped out from behind the rocks. The Winchester leveled. End of the trail, he called. Riker reined in, eyes narrowing. "You think you've got me boxed?" Cole's answer was the crack of the rifle. One of the flankers went down hard, his horse bolting. The other swung his gun up. But Cole's second shot took him clean. Riker was already moving, spurring his horse toward the far end of the wash. Cole dropped the rifle, drew the Colt, and ran. The two men met in the narrowest part of the pass, horses screaming, dust rising in a choking cloud. Riker fired once, the bullet tearing past Cole's ear. Cole's return shot hit Riker's shoulder, spinning him in the saddle. The outlaw leader tumbled to the ground, rolling to his feet with a knife in hand. They circled, the moonlight catching on steel, breath steaming in the cold air. Riker lunged, the blade flashing. Cole caught his wrist, twisted, felt the knife drop. A hard punch to the jaw sent Riker staggering back. "This ends now," Cole said. Riker straightened, blood on his lip, and smiled. "One of us, Maddox." Cole's final shot was quick, clean. Riker fell without a sound. The Badlands were silent again, save for Bramble's soft breathing. Cole stood over the body for a long moment, the weight of the hunt settling into his bones. Then he holstered the Colt, mounted up, and rode toward the horizon. The hunter's moon was sinking, but the night still had miles to give. Dawn came pale and cold over the Badlands, the sky washed in the faint colors of ash and rose. Cole Maddox rode with his collar turned up against the chill, Bramble's steady gait the only sound in the stillness. Behind him, the land swallowed. The memory of the night, the gunfire, the dust, the way Riker's eyes had gone flat in the moonlight. He didn't look back, not because he wanted to forget, but because he knew he couldn't. Some things stayed with you whether you faced them or not. The trail wound down into a shallow valley where the grass grew in thin, stubborn patches, and the air smelled faintly of sage. Cole let Bramble slow to a walk, giving her time to breathe. His own body ached, ribs sore, shoulder tight from the fight, but it was the quiet that pressed on him most. After days of running, fighting, and listening for the next shot, the silence felt almost unnatural. By mid-morning, he reached a creek. The water was clear and cold, running over smooth stones. Cole dismounted, letting Bramble drink while he knelt to splash his face. The shock of the cold cut through the fog in his head, but it didn't wash away the heaviness in his chest. He thought of the men he'd faced, the ones who'd chosen Riker's side, the ones who'd fallen in the dust. He didn't hate them. Hate was too simple. What he felt was something heavier, a kind of sorrow for the way the West chewed men up and spat them out, leaving nothing but bones and stories. A flicker of movement caught his eye. A rider, far off on the ridge. Cole froze, watching. The figure sat still for a long moment, then turned and disappeared over the rise. He couldn't tell if it was friend, foe, or just another soul passing through. Out here, you never knew. By afternoon, he reached a small settlement, just a handful of buildings clustered around a well. A blacksmith's hammer rang in the distance, and the smell of baking bread drifted from somewhere unseen. Cole tied Bramble outside the livery and stepped into the general store. The woman behind the counter looked him over, her eyes lingering on the dust on his coat, the weariness in his face. "Long ride?" she asked. "Long enough," Cole said. She nodded, as if that was all the answer she needed. He bought coffee, jerky, and a small tin of salve for his ribs. As she wrapped the goods, she said quietly, "Word is, Riker's dead." Cole met her gaze. "Word travels fast, faster than the truth, sometimes," she said, handing him the bundle. "Be careful, Maddox. Men like Riker leave shadows." Behind, outside, the sun was dipping low again, painting the street in gold and shadow. Cole stood for a moment, breathing in the smell of horses and wood smoke, listening to the creak of wagon wheels. It was almost peaceful, almost. He found a room above the saloon, small but clean, with a window that looked out over the street. As night fell, he sat there with a cup of coffee, watching the lamps flicker to life one by one. Somewhere below, laughter rose and fell, the sound warm and human. For the first time in days, he let himself breathe without listening for footsteps in the dark. But even as he sat there, he knew the West didn't give men like him happy endings. It gave them moments, brief, fragile, before the next storm rolled in. And when it did, he'd be ready for now, though. Cole Maddox watched the street, the coffee cooling in his hands, and let the quiet settle around him like a blanket. The rain came in slow, silver threads, soft enough to blur the edges of the street outside Cole Maddox's window. He sat in the same chair he'd claimed the night before, coffee cooling in his hands, watching the world through the wavering glass. Redwater was quiet in the morning, the kind of quiet that made a man think maybe, just maybe, he could stay a while. Then the knock came. It wasn't loud, just 3 measured raps on the door downstairs, followed by the low murmur of the saloon keeper's voice. Cole didn't move at first. He'd learned that trouble rarely announced itself with a shout. It came polite, patient, and smiling. A moment later, boots creaked on the stairs. Cole set the cup down, his hand drifting toward the Colt on the table. The footsteps stopped outside his door. A pause, then a voice he hadn't heard in 6 years. "Cole, it's me." He froze. The voice was softer than he remembered, but it carried the same weight, the same pull in his chest. He stood slowly, crossing the room, and opened the door. She was standing there in a long, dust-stained coat, her hat pulled low against the rain. Her hair was darker now, her eyes sharper, but there was no mistaking her. Elena Ward. Once, they'd ridden together, not as lovers, but as something more dangerous, partners. She'd been quick with a gun, quicker with a plan, and quicker still to vanish when the law or the wrong kind of outlaw came sniffing. The last time he'd seen her, she'd been riding hard out of a burning camp, leaving him to face the bullets alone. "Elena," he said, his voice flat. "Cole." She glanced past him into the room, then back to his face. "You gonna let me in?" He stepped aside, though every instinct told him not to. She moved like she always had, light on her feet, eyes taking in every corner, every exit. She pulled off her hat, shook the rain from her hair, and smiled faintly. "You look the same," she said. "You don't," he replied. She laughed once, short and without much humor. "Guess the years have been busier for me." Cole leaned against the table, arms crossed. "Why are you here?" Her smile faded. "Because Riker wasn't the end of it." He felt his jaw tighten. "Go on." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "Riker was working for someone, a man named Calder, big rancher out of the North Country. He's got money, men, and a long memory, and he's got a reason to hate you." Cole's eyes narrowed. "I've never met him." "You have," she said quietly. "You just didn't know his name. Remember the job in Silver Mesa? The payroll coach." He remembered. The dust, the gunfire, the way the job had gone sideways. They'd taken the money, but one of the guards had fought hard, too hard, and Cole had put him down. He'd been just doing what he had to do, to survive. That guard, Elena said, was Calder's brother. The room felt smaller. The rain outside seemed louder. "He's coming for you, Cole," she said. "And he's not sending hired guns this time. He's coming himself." Cole studied her face. "And you? Why warn me?" She hesitated, then looked away. "Because I owe you. For that night in the canyon. You could have left me." "I should have," he said. But there was no heat in it. She met his eyes again. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to listen. Calder's already in Redwater. He's watching." Cole's hand went to the Colt without thinking, his mind already mapping the street, the alleys, the vantage points where, "I don't know," she said, "but he's patient. He'll wait until you're comfortable, until you think you're safe." He moved to the window, scanning the street. The rain had thinned, leaving the dust dark and slick. A wagon rattled past, its driver hunched against the damp. 2 men stood under the awning of the Mercantile, talking low. Neither looked up. When he turned back, Elena was watching him with that same unreadable expression she'd worn the day they'd met, part challenge, part warning. "You could run," she said. "You know I won't." She nodded once, Then, "You'll need help." He almost laughed. "Yours? I'm still quick," she said. "And I still shoot straighter than you." For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the years between them heavy in the air. Then Cole reached for his hat. "All right," he said. "Let's find him." The rain had stopped, but Redwater still glistened as if the streets were made of black glass. Lantern light spilled from doorways and windows, pooling in the mud and reflecting the shapes of passers-by, shapes that could be anyone or anything. Cole Maddox walked with his hat brim low, Elena a half step behind, her eyes scanning every shadow. They'd been moving like this for an hour, circling the heart of town, watching for a face neither of them had seen in years, Calder's. Cole knew the type, a man who didn't need to shout to be dangerous, the kind who could stand in a crowd and still make the air feel heavier. They passed the Mercantile, where two men leaned against the wall, smoking. One of them glanced up, his gaze lingering on Cole a moment too long. Elena's hand brushed the butt of her revolver, but Cole shook his head. Not yet. They turned down a narrow side street, the kind where the buildings leaned in close, their upper floors almost touching. The air smelled of wet wood and coal smoke. Somewhere ahead, a door slammed, followed by the muffled sound of boots. On cobblestone, Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "We're being herded." Cole didn't answer. He could feel it too, the way the streets seemed to funnel them, the way every turn narrowed their options. He slowed, letting his eyes adjust to the deeper dark between the buildings. A figure appeared at the far end of the alley, tall, broad-shouldered, a long coat that shifted with the wind. Calder. Cole couldn't be sure. The man didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, blocking the way. Elena's breath was steady, but her fingers flexed near her gun. Could be him. Could be bait, Cole murmured. They backed up slowly, but the sound of boots came from behind them now. 2, maybe 3 men, their steps deliberate. The alley had become a trap. Cole's mind worked fast. The walls here were close, the windows low. He glanced at Elena, and in that split second, they both knew the move. She stepped to the left, firing once into the air. The shot cracked like lightning, drawing the men's eyes. Cole lunged for the nearest window, smashing the glass with his elbow and hauling himself through. Inside was a storeroom, dim and smelling of grain. Elena tumbled in after him, landing light on her feet. They didn't stop, crossed the room, kicked open the back door, and spilled into another alley that ran parallel to the first. The shouts behind them told him the trap had sprung to slow. They moved fast now, weaving through the back streets, the sound of pursuit fading and swelling as their hunters tried to guess their path. Cole kept his ears open, his eyes on the lines of light spilling from door cracks and shutters. Finally, they ducked into the shadow of a stable. The smell of hay and horses wrapped around them, masking their scent from the street. Cole leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "That was him," Elena said quietly. "I saw his face when the light hit." "Calder." Cole's jaw tightened. "Then he saw us too," she nodded. "And he's not going to rush it. He'll want the ground in his favor." Cole looked out through a gap in the boards, watching the street. The rain had left the dust heavy, the lantern light soft. Somewhere out there, Calder was moving his pieces, setting the board. Elena holstered her gun. "We've got one advantage." "What's that?" "He thinks we're running." Cole's eyes narrowed, a slow, dangerous smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Then we'll make him think he's right." The night had settled over Redwater like a heavy blanket, muffling sound and swallowing the edges of the buildings. Cole Maddox and Elena Ward moved through the back alleys, their boots silent on the damp boards, the smell of rain still clinging to the air. Somewhere out there, Calder was watching, and they meant to make him think they were exactly where he wanted them. They'd chosen their ground carefully, a narrow stretch of street, between the old freight office and the abandoned telegraph station. The freight office had a second-floor balcony with a clear view of the street. The telegraph station's roofline offered cover and a sniper's angle. Between them, the street was a killing box for whoever stepped into it first. Cole crouched in the shadow of the freight office, checking the Winchester's action one last time. Elena was across the street, her silhouette barely visible against the dark wall. She gave a small nod, the signal that she was in position. The plan was simple: make themselves visible, draw Calder's men into the open, and take them apart before Calder himself stepped in. But Cole knew plans had a way of bleeding out. In the first 30 seconds, they waited. The street was quiet, save for the occasional creak of wood as the buildings cooled in the night air. Somewhere far off, a dog barked once, then fell silent. Cole's eyes scanned the shadows, looking for the telltale shift of movement. Then he saw it, a flicker at the far end of the street. A man stepped into the lamplight, then another, then 2 more. They moved slow, deliberate, their hands loose at their sides. Not Calder, not yet. Cole let them come halfway before he stepped out from the shadow, letting the lamplight catch his face. "Looking for me?" he called, his voice carrying in the still air. The men froze. One of them smiled thinly. "Calder says you've been hard to find. Guess you weren't looking in the right places." The smile faded. "You're coming with us." Cole's answer was the sharp crack of the Winchester. The first man dropped before the others could draw. Elena's revolver barked twice from across the street, and another went down hard. The last 2 dove for cover, returning fire in wild bursts that splintered the freight office's balcony rail. Cole moved fast, ducking back into the shadows, circling toward the telegraph station. He caught sight of Elena reloading behind a stack of crates, her jaw set, eyes locked on the street. She didn't see the figure moving along the roofline above her. "Elena!" Cole's shout cut through the gunfire. She spun, firing upward just as the man on the roof leveled his rifle. The shot took him in the shoulder, sending him tumbling into the dust below. The street went still again, save for the groans of the wounded. Cole scanned the rooftops, the alleys, the doorways. No Calder. Elena crossed to him, her breath quick. "He's not here." "He's here," Cole said, his voice low. "He's just not ready yet." She frowned. "Then what was this? Testing?" "The fence," Cole replied, seeing where it's weak. They stood there in the lamplight, the bodies cooling around them, the night pressing in. Cole could feel it, the weight of Calder's patience, the certainty that the real strike was still coming. Elena holstered her gun. "Then we make him think the fence is weaker than it is." Cole met her eyes, a slow smile forming. "Bait, bait," she agreed. Night had settled over Redwater like a heavy blanket, muffling sound and swallowing the edges of the buildings. Not a dog barked, not a note drifted from the saloon. It was the kind of silence that made a man feel the whole town was holding its breath. Cole Maddox stood in the darkened second floor of the freight office, watching the street through a slit in the curtains. Across the way, Elena Ward crouched on the roof line of the old telegraph station, her figure melting into the shadows. The plan was simple. Cole would make himself visible, draw Calder's men into the open, and force Calder to show himself. But both of them knew Calder wasn't a fool. That's why there was a second layer to the plan, anticipating his counter move and turning it against him. Cole caught the first sign of movement, two men stepping out from the far corner, walking, slow, deliberate. Their hands hung loose, but their easy gait carried the weight of danger. Behind them, shadows slid along the building fronts, more men, keeping to the dark. On the roof, Elena shifted position just enough for Cole to catch the signal, ready. When the two men reached the middle of the street, Cole stepped into the lamplight, letting them see his face. "Looking for me," his voice carried in the still air. One of them smiled thinly. "Calder says you've been hard to find. Guess you weren't looking in the right places." The smile vanished. "You're coming with us." Cole's answer was the sharp crack of the Winchester. The first man dropped before the others could draw. Elena's revolver barked twice from across the street, and another went down hard. The rest dove for cover, firing wild. Bullets chewed splinters from the freight office balcony. Cole ducked back, circling toward the telegraph station. Elena was reloading behind a stack of crates, jaw set, eyes locked on the street. She didn't see the figure moving along the roof above her. "Elena!" Cole's shout cut through the gunfire. She spun, firing upward just as the man leveled his rifle. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, sending him tumbling into the dust. Then, stillness. The wounded groaned, but no more shots came. Cole scanned the rooftops, the alleys, the doorways. No Calder. Elena crossed to him, breathing hard. "He's not here." "He's here," Cole said, voice low. Just not ready yet. She frowned. Then what was this? Testing the fence, Cole replied. Seeing where it's weak. They stood in the lamplight. The night pressing in. Cole could feel Calder's patience like a weight in the air. The certainty that the real strike was still coming. Elena holstered her gun. Then we make him think the fence is weaker than it is. Cole met her eyes. A slow, dangerous smile forming. Bait, she agreed. By the time the first light of dawn touched Redwater's rooftops, the town already felt different. It wasn't just the quiet, it was the way people moved. Shopkeepers kept their heads down. Doors that were usually open at this hour stayed shut. The air carried that strange, heavy stillness that comes when everyone knows something is about to happen. Cole Maddox stood at the corner of Main and Willow, hat brim low, scanning the street. Elena Ward was across the way, leaning against the post outside the livery, her eyes hidden in shadow. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Both could feel it. Calder was moving. The first sign came in the form of strangers. 3 men, dressed like drifters, loitered near the saloon. Another pair leaned against the wall by the general store. They didn't talk to each other, but their eyes tracked every passerby. Calder's men, scattered like seeds through the town. They're closing the exits. Elena murmured when Cole crossed to her under the pretense of checking Bramble's saddle. Yeah, Cole said, and they're not hiding it, which meant Calder wanted them to know, wanted them to feel the walls closing in. They spent the morning moving through the back streets, mapping the positions of every unfamiliar face. By noon, they'd counted at least a dozen men, enough to choke the main street from both ends. Calder wasn't just hunting them. He was turning Redwater into a cage at the edge of town. Cole and Elena ducked into the shadow of an abandoned feed store. The air inside was thick with dust, the floor littered with broken sacks and old tools. Cole crouched by the window, watching the street. He's not going to rush it, Cole said. He'll wait until we're boxed in tight. Elena's gaze was sharp. Then we need to make him think we're already cornered. Cole looked at her. You want to spring the trap early. It's the only way we choose the ground, she said. If we wait, he'll pick it for us. They worked quickly. Elena would be the visible target, moving through the open street as if she were trying to slip out of town. Cole would shadow her from the rooftops, ready to cut down anyone who moved. Into soon, the goal wasn't to kill them all. Not yet, but to force Calder to step out of the shadows. By late afternoon, the plan was in motion. Elena walked with measured steps down Main Street, her coat collar turned up against the wind. Cole moved above, keeping low, the Winchester cradled in his hands. From his vantage point, he could see Calder's men shifting, closing in. Then he saw him. Calder stood in the doorway of the old bank, half in shadow, watching Elena with the stillness of a predator. He didn't move toward her. He didn't call out. He just watched, as if weighing the moment. Cole's finger tightened on the trigger, but something stopped him. Calder wasn't alone. 2 more men were in the shadows behind him, rifles ready, eyes scanning the rooftops. It was a standoff without a shot fired. Calder knew Cole was there. Cole knew Calder knew. And between them, Elena kept walking, every step a calculated risk. Then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, Calder stepped back into the darkness, vanishing from sight. His men melted away with him, leaving the street empty. Elena reached the end of the block and turned into the alley where Cole dropped down to meet her. He's not ready, she said. No, Cole replied, his voice low, but he's close. They both knew what that meant. The next time Calder showed himself, it wouldn't be to watch. The first shot came just after sundown. It wasn't aimed at Cole Maddox or Elena Ward. It was aimed at the street itself, shattering a lantern outside the saloon. The oil caught instantly, flames licking up the wooden post, throwing wild shadows across the buildings. Then the shouting started. Cole was halfway down Main Street when he saw them, Calder's men, moving fast from both ends of town. Not a slow tightening of the noose this time. This was a rush, a flood meant to overwhelm before anyone could think. Elena, he barked, spotting her near the livery. She was already moving, revolver in hand, eyes scanning for the first target. The townsfolk scattered, doors slamming, windows shuttering. the air filled with the sharp tang of smoke and the echo of boots on wood. Cole ducked into the shadow of the mercantile, Winchester up, and dropped the first man who came charging through the firelight. Across the street, Elena fired twice, her shots clean and fast. One of Calder's men spun and fell, the other dove. Behind a water trough, bullets chewed into the boards beside her, splinters flying. Back to the freight office, Cole shouted. They moved together, covering each other's steps. Weaving through the chaos, Calder's men weren't just shooting, they were driving them, forcing them toward the center of town. Cole could see the pattern now. This wasn't about killing them here. This was about pushing them into a kill zone. They reached the freight office just as two more men came around the corner. Cole swung the Winchester up, but Elena was faster. Her shot took the lead man in the chest, dropping him instantly. Cole finished the second with a short, brutal burst. Inside, the freight office was dim and close, the air thick with dust. Cole slammed the door and shoved a crate against it. "They're trying to hurt us," he said, breathing hard. Elena's eyes were sharp. "Then we break the herd." From the upstairs window, they could see the street below, Calder's men moving in coordinated lines, cutting off every escape. The fire outside the saloon had spread, casting the whole street in a flickering orange glow. Shadows danced across the walls, making it hard to tell where the next shot might come from. Cole spotted a gap, a narrow alley between the telegraph station and the blacksmith's shop. "That's our way out," he said, "but we'll have to draw them off first." Elena's smile was quick and dangerous. "I'll give them something to chase." Before he could argue, she was gone, slipping out the back and into the maze of alleys. Moments later, gunfire erupted on the far side of the street, sharp, deliberate shots meant to pull Calder's men away from the freight office. It worked. Cole saw the lines break, men peeling off to hunt her down. He took the chance, slipping into the alley and moving fast, keeping low. The heat from the fire was at his back, the sound of boots and shouting all around. He reached the blacksmith's yard just as Elena appeared from the shadows, breathless but grinning. "Miss me every second," he said, and they moved together into the deeper dark beyond the edge of town. Behind them, Redwater burned in patches, the fight still raging. Calder hadn't caught them. Not yet. But Cole knew this was only the first swing of the hammer. The next one would fall. Harder. They didn't stop riding until the glow of Redwater's burning streets was no more than a faint smear on the horizon. The night air was cold out here, the kind that bit through a man's coat and made every breath feel sharper. Cole Maddox slowed Bramble to a walk, letting her catch her wind. Elena Ward rode beside him, her face pale in the moonlight, eyes still scanning the darkness behind them. They found shelter in a dry arroyo, its walls high enough to hide a fire. Cole dismounted, first leading Bramble into the shadows. Elena followed, her movements quick and quiet. Neither spoke until the horses were tied and the fire was lit, a small, low flame that barely touched the walls. Cole sat with his back to the stone, cleaning the Winchester with slow, deliberate motions. Elena crouched across from him, wrapping a strip of cloth around a shallow cut on her arm. "They weren't trying to kill us tonight," she said finally. "No," Cole agreed. "They were trying to drive us, and we let them." Her eyes flicked up. "We didn't have much choice." Cole didn't answer right away. He thought about the way Calder had stood in the bank doorway earlier, watching, measuring. The man wasn't just a fighter. He was a strategist, and that made him dangerous in a way bullets alone couldn't match. Elena broke the silence. "He's got the town now, every street, every building. If we go back in blind, we're dead." "Then we don't go in blind," Cole said. "We make him come to us." She tilted her head. "And how do you plan to do that?" Cole's gaze was steady. "We hit something he can't ignore. Supplies, horses, men. We make him bleed until he has to step out of the shadows." Elena's mouth curved into a faint smile. "That's risky. That's war." The fire popped softly, sending a thin ribbon of smoke into the night. Somewhere far off, a coyote called, the sound lonely and sharp. Cole leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "We'll move before dawn," he said. "Circle north, cut across the ridge. There's an old stage stop out there, abandoned, but close enough to the main trail. We can watch the road, pick off his riders one by one." Elena nodded slowly, and when Calder comes himself, Cole's eyes hardened. "Then we finish it." For a long moment, they just sat there, the firelight flickering between them. The arroyo walls held the heat, but the air still carried the scent of smoke from Redwater. It clung to their clothes, their skin, a reminder of what they'd left behind, and what they'd have to walk back into. Elena finally lay back against her saddle, her voice softer now. "You ever get tired of it, Cole? The running, the fighting?" He didn't look at her every day. Then why keep going? He thought about that for a long moment, the firelight dancing in his eyes, because stopping's worse. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest echo of hoof beats. Both of them froze, listening. The sound faded, but neither relaxed. Calder's reach was long, and the night was far from over. The ridge above the old stage stop was nothing but jagged rock and wind-bent sage. Cole Maddox lay prone behind a boulder, the Winchester steady in his hands, eyes fixed on the trail below. Elena Ward crouched beside him, her breath slow, her revolver resting across her knee. The dawn was thin and gray, the kind of light that made the world feel like it was holding its breath. They'd been here since before first light, waiting. Calder's supply riders would have to pass this way, and if Calder himself came to see why his men weren't returning, Cole would be ready. The first sound was the faint jingle of tack. Then the riders appeared, 4 men, moving slow, scanning the ridges. Cole let them come into the narrowest part of the trail before he fired. The first man pitched from his saddle. The second's horse reared and bolted. Elena's shots cracked sharp in the cold air, dropping another before the last man could turn and run. Silence. Then hoof beats, heavier, slower. Calder. He rode into view like he owned the land, long coat snapping in the wind, eyes locked on the ridge where Cole waited. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look afraid. He just swung down from his horse and started walking toward the rocks. Cole rose from cover, the Winchester still in his hands. "It ends here, Calder." Calder's voice was calm, almost amused. "You've been saying that since Dry Creek. You've been running since Dry Creek." Calder smiled faintly. "No, I've been hunting." He moved fast for a man his size, drawing and firing in one motion. The bullet tore a groove in the rock by Cole's head. Cole dropped the Winchester, rolling down the slope, drawing the Colt as he came up. The 2 men circled in the dust, the wind whipping at their coats. Elena's voice cut through the air. "Cole." Calder turned just enough for Cole to close the distance. They slammed together, the guns knocked aside, fists and elbows finding bone. Calder was strong, but Cole fought like a man who'd been carrying this moment for too long. A hard right to the jaw staggered Calder. A knee to the ribs drove the air from his lungs. Calder swung wild, catching Cole across the cheek. Pain flared, but Cole didn't back up. He grabbed Calder's coat, drove him back against the boulder, and pressed the Colt to his chest. "This is for every mile you made me ride," Cole said, voice low. The shot was deafening in the narrow space. Calder's eyes went wide, then empty. He slid down the rock, the dust settling around him. For a long moment, Cole just stood there, breathing hard, the Colt still in his hand. Elena stepped forward, her gaze steady. "It's done." Cole holstered the gun, looking out over the trail. The wind carried the smell of sage and gunpowder, the sky brightening with the first real light of day. They didn't speak as they saddled the horses. There was nothing left to say. Redwater was behind them, Calder was gone, and the road ahead was open for now. As they rode out, the sun broke over the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. Cole didn't look back. In the West, you never looked back.